Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel AWS DevOps Niche 11. In my last video, I talked about how to create a Kubernetes cluster in AWS using KOPS. If you have not watched my previous video, you can click on the link above, or I have posted the link as well as in my description of this video. So as a continuation to that, in this video, we will see how to create a deployment and service in Kubernetes. So now is that our cluster is ready. Whatever we created using KOPS in the AWS environment, now the cluster is ready. So we will proceed further and see how do we create a deployment on the Kubernetes cluster, and also how to expose your application via the service. So that is what we are going to see on this video. So let's move ahead. So I will go back to my EC2 instance in which I created a Kubernetes cluster using KOPS. Now let us check the health of the cluster. So I'm going to give the command KOPS cluster. Okay, so this is giving me the information about what is the cluster name. So this is my cluster name, and in which cloud it is hosted. It is in AWS cloud, and it is in the availability zone US East 1A. Okay, now let us see what are all the nodes that are created within the cluster. So further, the command will be kubectl nodes. So if you see the output of this command, there are two nodes within this cluster. There are two instances within this cluster. So one is basically the node, its role is a node, and the other one is the control plane, right? And you can see that it is running the Kubernetes version 1.26.5. So these are the nodes that we have in the Kubernetes cluster, what we created using KOPS. I can actually check this in the AWS console also. If you see here, this one is our KOPS bootstrap instance from which we created the Kubernetes cluster. But after the cluster, these are the two instances that got created. This is the control plane node, and this is the actual node. Okay, so now we will see how to create a deployment on this Kubernetes cluster. So this is a command to create a deployment. So I will say kubectl create deployment, and the deployment name is, let's say I'm going to create nginx pods. Okay, so I will say kubectl create deployment. The deployment name will be nginx-1, and the image what I'm going to download from the Docker Hub will be nginx. Okay, so this command is going to create a deployment within the Kubernetes cluster, and once the deployment is created, it will automatically create the pods also. So let me execute this command. So it says deployment nginx-1 created. So let us view the details of this deployment. I will say kubectl get deploy. So you can see here it is saying the deployment name is nginx-1. It is running one pod. There is one pod running, and this one represents container. So there is one pod which is running one nginx container. So there is another command kubectl get deploy -o wide if you want to see more details about this deployment. So here it is also talking about the containers. The container is nginx, the image is nginx, and the selector is app is equal to nginx-1. So now we will also see if the pods has also got created, because as I mentioned, deployment will automatically create the pods. So if I give the command kubectl get pod, so you can see that this is the pod name, nginx-1-7799. This is a pod name, and this pod is running on container as well. So if I give the same command kubectl get pod -o wide to give some additional details. Sorry, there's a typo here. Now you can see some additional details about the pod. So this is also having a pod IP address. and it is also showing the instance in which this pod is running. So 54D34. So what is that instance? Let us just verify that. It is our node, this one. On this node, the pod is running. Okay. Now I want to access this Nginx application from the outside world. How do I do it? So there is no way I can access from the pod IP address, because this will be an internal IP address which is not reachable to the outside world. And we know that Nginx by default runs on port 80. So if I grab this IP and put it in my browser, right, and I will just say maybe :80. Are you seeing any response here? No, because no way we will be able to access the application via the pod IP address. And that is the reason we create something called as a service. So the concept of a Kubernetes service is basically to help expose your application to be accessed by the application, the outside world. And there are various service types which I will go through. So if you see, these are all the various ways how you can expose your application via the service. So we have the cluster IP. So this will expose the service on a cluster's internal IP address, right? And this is the default service type. And there is a node port concept. Here, your application will be exposed on each of the nodes IP at a static port. And that is what we are going to see. We are going to expose our service via the node port, and we are going to access the Nginx application via the node port. So you will be able to contact the node port service from outside the cluster by requesting node IP:node port. So I will anyway show you how to create a node port and how do we access the application via the node port. The third option is a load balancer. You can also expose the service via the load balancer as well. In that case, there will be a load balancer created in the AWS, and with the load balancer endpoint, we will be able to access our Nginx application. And the other option is the external name. So let's say you want to map the output of your load balance to some other domain. We call it as a canonical name, right? So that is also possible. In that case, you have to create the service type as an external name. Okay. So for this demo here, I'm going to mainly focus on the node port. So how do we expose the application through the service via the node port? So let's see that. So now we have our deployment created, right? So if I give the command kubectl get deploy, this is our deployment. And this deployment, I'm going to expose as a service and via the node port. So what is the command to do that? This is a command. Let me copy this. kubectl expose deployment, and this is the deployment name. And in which port we are exposing it? Port 8080, and via service type. The service type is a node port. Okay. So now it is saying the service is already exposed. Now we will view the details of the service. kubectl get service. Here it is going to give you the cluster IP address. Now you can see that there is an internal IP address of the cluster, which is 100.64.0.1. And there is also another IP address it has created for the node port. Can you see here? This is that node port service type. This is the cluster IP for that node port. And this is a very important information for us. What is that actual node port, the static port on which we are going to access our Nginx application? It is 32603. Right? So let's make a note of this. Now we will see how to access the Nginx application through this node port 32603. Also, I just wanted to add that whenever we are selecting node port, so the port ranges between 30,000 to 32,767. So within that port range, a random port will be allocated for this node port, right? So in this case, it is 32,603. Now let us see More details about this service, I'll give the command kubectl get service -o void. Okay, here it is including the selector field also. Okay, fine. So now again, these two cluster IPs, they are no way accessible for the outside world, right? So now how do we access Nginx using this node port? The only way available for us is to access via this node port. Now, what is our first step? On our EC2 instances, that is the control plane instance as well as the other node instance, we need to first open this port 32603 in the security group. Okay, so that is our first step. Let's go ahead and open the port in the security group. So first, I will go to the control plane instance. I click security here. Okay, I click the security groups. I click edit inbound rules. I will add one rule, custom TCP. And what is the port number? Which is our node port? It is 32603. So I will say 32603 and I'm going to open it from anywhere. Save the rules. I'm going to do the same step for our other instance also, which is having the role as a node, this one. Right. So for this also, I'll go to the security group. I will edit the inbound rules. I will add a rule, custom TCP. What is our node port? 32603. From anywhere, save the rules. Okay, so now we have opened that node port in the security group on both the instances, right? For our control plane as well as the node also. Now, how do we access the application Nginx via this node port? Let's go ahead and see that. So I go to my EC2 dashboard. First, let me pick the public IP address of my control plane. Let me copy this and I will go into the browser here. So if you see, the node port can be accessed, the application can be accessed with this format, node IP colon the node port. Node IP colon node port. What is our node IP? This is our node IP. This is a control plane IP address. And what is our node port in this case? It is 32603. So let me say 32603. Enter. Can you see here? Now we are able to access the Nginx application. So this is your node IP. This is your node IP. That is, I will say, node IP address. Okay, and this one 32603 is your node port. So this is the way we can access our application using this node IP and node port. Now we will try the same for our next, through the next node also. I will take this node's IP address here and I'll put that IP in the browser, colon, the same port number, that is 32603. That's why we open this port in the security group. Enter. Can you see here? Now we can access the Nginx application from the other node as well. Right, so this is the concept of the node port I want to talk about. How to expose the deployment for outside access through the service and via the node port. Okay, so I hope this concept was clear to everyone, team. So if you have any questions, comments, you can put it in the comment section. And I hope this video was helpful as well. So if you like this information, please feel free to share with your other contacts, and please feel free to subscribe to my channel as well. So thank you everyone, and I will meet you all in my next video. Thank you all so much.